He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So just like when we was at the 10 to 12 slot, from the 2 to 3 slot, we're going to give you what we got from a Bible perspective. What's the first thing that will come to your mind you'd like to talk about on this first show, Q? And then those of you that want to call in and let us know that you tuned in from the 10 o'clock hour to this hour, let us know. And those of you that are new, tune in and let us know so we can get to know each other's personality.
Well, right now, I don't have nothing right now. I'm just so excited to be over here.
It is, man. It's exciting. We're on 2 stations now. We'll be 3 very soon with the FM station kicking in. And now we on, you can also not only listen to us, but see us at WMQM 1600 AM YouTube. WMQM 1600 AM YouTube. Now that's a drawback because I got to be in here with all these hot lights and, oh God. If hell feel like this, I know I got to go to heaven. I guess what we'll start off with, Q.
I've got a caller.
You got a call already?
Uh-huh.
Well, come on with it.
Okay, gonna pass it through now.
You gotta let me know when they pass through, because I don't know.
Okay, they pass through now.
Hey, Pastor Guy.
Hello, caller. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, man. Man, I'm so glad y'all done flipped this thing over, man. Now I'm able to stay at one spot. Listen to you, Lawson, and all of y'all.
Oh, God.
I just enjoy it, man.
Well, I'll stay by anything that I can do with this show to help you in your perspective of God. I promise you I'm here to help you.
Yes, sir.
For our opening topic, do you have anything you'd like to pick out that you'd like us to start off with? Because I talk about everything along the gamut.
Well, I just hope the hand of God is on the University of Memphis. I want them to win tonight.
And I forgot they playing right now. To the first show we got, they playing in the tournament right now as we speak. I forgot about that on stage, but you made me feel kind of, I decided to thank God for the DVR.
Well, to be honest with you, I didn't know they were playing either.
They started at 2 o'clock. They playing Tulane.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they on right now as we speak.
I always be listening to the night game, so, you know, I guess I'll check them out later, because I like to listen to the end of the game.
Okay, all right. Well, the end of it going to tell the story.
Hey, is your program start from 2 to 4?
No, 2 to 3. 2 to 3.
Okay, 2 to 3.
Right, with the crossover, eventually, once the FM station kick in, you won't be hard to find any 2-hour shows over here, and everything's going to be pretty much talk radio. They're going to talk about sports. They're going to talk about God. They're going to talk about sex. They're going to talk about something. That's what's going to happen. Hey, thank y'all, David. Be blessed, man.
Okay, you too, Pastor Guy. Bye.
It's 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. Guess I'll start off like we've been doing, Q, with waking up the people that we deal with the most. Even though we forget about the black man, we forget about the white man, we know that you have to deal with the elephant in the room. In the days of making excuses, the days of complaining, and the days of being militant, it hasn't produced anything. It won't produce anything. I come to bring you the techniques of God.
That's true.
The techniques of God is that you learn history. You don't live it.
Mm-hmm.
The techniques of God is that you forgive no matter what they've done.
That's right.
And the techniques of God is that you live for your destiny, not your history. So I guess we'll start out with Mr. Martin Luther King and find out, where is Martin Luther King? Why don't we start out with that? You think you?
Yeah, let's go ahead and start about.
Let's start with that.
It's been 50 years since Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was shot to death on a motel balcony in Memphis, Tennessee. And over the decades, he has become one of the most revered figures in American history. There is an impressive memorial to him in Washington, D.C., and a museum celebrating his life in Atlanta, Georgia. Countless schools and boulevards have been named after him, and a national holiday is dedicated to his memory. How is it then that so much of his legacy, what he hoped to pass on to the future, has been lost? King wanted equality under the law and said, famously, that people ought to judge one another based on character, not skin color. But he also believed that blacks had an important role to play in their own advancement. The black civil rights battles in America are now over, and King's side won. The best indication of that may be that King has had no real successor. If black Americans were still faced with legitimate threats to civil rights, such as legal discrimination or voter disenfranchisement, it's likely that leaders of King's caliber would have emerged to carry on the fight. Instead, what we have today are pretenders who have turned the civil rights movement into an industry, if not a racket. And what have these racketeers accomplished? A lot for themselves and very little for their constituents. Racial gaps in income, education, and home ownership were narrowing in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s. But after King was replaced as the spokesman for Black America by the likes of Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, and others, these gaps began to widen in the 1970s, 80s, and 90s. This suggests that the racial disparities that continue today aren't driven by whatever racism that still exists, despite all the claims to the contrary from progressives and their allies in the media. It also suggests that Black culture, attitudes toward marriage, education, work, and the rule of law plays a much larger role than the left wants to acknowledge. More marches won't address fatherless homes. More sit-ins won't lower Black crime rates or narrow the school achievement gap. Electing more Black politicians and appointing more Black government officials can't compensate for these cultural deficiencies either. Black mayors, congressmen, senators, police chiefs, and school superintendents have become commonplace since the 1970s. Even the election of a Black president, twice, failed to close the racial divide in many key measures. Black-white differences in poverty, home ownership, and incomes all grew wider under President Obama. Discussion of antisocial behavior in poor Black communities, let alone the possibility that it plays a significant role in racial inequality, has become another casualty of the post-60s era. King and other Black leaders at the time spoke openly about the need for more responsible behavior. After remarking on the disproportionately high inner-city crime rates, King told a Black congregation in St. Louis that we've got to do something about our moral standards. We know that there are many things wrong in the white world, he said, but there are many things wrong in the Black world too. We can't keep on blaming the white man. There are things we must do for ourselves. The pretenders to King's legacy mostly ignore this advice, preferring instead to keep the onus on whites. Where King tried to instill the importance of personal responsibility and self-determination, his counterparts today spend more time making excuses for counterproductive behavior and dismissing any criticism of it as racist. Activists who long ago abandoned King's colorblind standard, which was the basis for the landmark civil rights laws enacted in the 1960s, tell young Black Americans today that they are victims first and foremost. White society is against you, they say, even if you have no clear examples of discrimination to point to. They are told that fire hoses and poll taxes have been replaced by unconscious racism, white privilege, and microaggressions. A generation of Blacks who have more opportunity than any previous generation are being taught that America offers them little more than bigoted teachers, biased employers, and trigger-happy cops. It's not only a lie, but as King understood, it's also self-destructive. Black activists and white progressives stress racism because it serves their own interest, not because it actually improves the station of Blacks. But this neglect of the role that Blacks must themselves play in writing their own lives can only make matters worse. A half-century after King's death, plenty of people are paying him lip service. Far too few are following his example. I'm Jason Riley of the Manhattan Institute for Prager University. Thank you for watching.
901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. Q?
Yes, sir.
Are we at that time where King's dream was that I could be judged by the content of my character and not the color of my skin?
That's true.
If I live by the content of my character, me being Black should really pretty much not even come into the conversation.
Right.
Because me being Black means nothing to me, to be honest with you. Just what God made me. I love what God made me.
That's true. Same here.
But now, I'm not a Black man in America. I'm a man that happens to be Black. I'm not a Black pastor in America. I'm a pastor that happens to be Black. I'm not a Black American. I'm an American that happens to be Black. Because whenever you use your race as the foundation of what you're saying, even if you use it as white, whether you're a white American or a white supremacist or a white nationalist, that's racist. That is the pure definition of racist, because you started with race as the conversation of who you are.
We have a caller. The other guy just called me in.
Here we go. The truth has sailed ship and he got off the bay. Hello, other guy. Welcome to the Truth Radio Show.
Here we go, boy. All right. Hey, man. I'm fiending over here, man.
What you fiending for?
I'm fiending for the Truth Radio station. What's wrong with you, man?
You listening to me? You can't hear?
I know I'm listening, man, but I missed you this morning.
Ah, from 10 o'clock. Well.
Yeah, that 2 o'clock thing, man. I'm fiending. Talking up on this telegram post, this wind awfully high. This going to be short and sweet.
Well, don't feel bad because I'm in the studio. Got all these lights, and somebody just texted me and said, Oh, wow, I can actually see you and listen to you now. By the way, you can go to WMQM 1600 AM YouTube, and we actually stream live, and they get a chance to look at me, and I can't see none of them. I said, oh, Lord, this is going to be kind of rough right here. But
it's going to be kind of rough. Look at man. I was so happy when I heard you were moving and going to 1 hour. I said, good. We're getting ready to play to you now. It went an hour time, I already saw.
I just played Breaker.
That's what I'm saying. In an hour time, you don't have time to play to you.
No, I got about 3 more I'm going to play today. That's what I really like to do, is just sit here and just give information. And matter of fact, you know what? You just made me think of the next one that I want to pull up.
Why don't you do this, man? Why don't you just now correct
Bringing you the truth
wrong.
about Democrats.
That's a guy. Correct me if I'm wrong. Cause I'm sitting there listening at this thing and you say, either you said, okay, or you were snoring. What are you doing up there? You went over there sleeping again?
Wait a minute, you said I did what?
I thought I heard you snoring, man.
Man, I wasn't snoring. I'm listening. I don't know what you're talking about. You're looking at me on the screen. Well, you
I ain't looking at you, man.
I forgot. Look here, Q. When I try to pull up the inconvenient truth about the Democratic Party, they said that video won't play.
That's because God is trying to tell you something, man.
No. God ain't in there, because God want me to expose them Democrats, how they been tricking not only black folk, they been tricking God folk. See, that as I was talking, you know what happened?
When you think about
God has a ram in the bush. I found it.
Got a ram in the bush. Look at man. You ain't got but an hour, man. Get up that thing and get you some callers in there, man.
I got
We
you.
want to hear the callers. We don't want to hear taking you with that racist propaganda that they speak.
It's racist.
Oh, Lord.
Racist propaganda.
Oh, my God. I got
Y'all be careful, man. Calling on somebody you don't know nothing about now.
I got one thing to ask you before you go.
Okay.
Do you have a song to sing?
Do I have a song to sing?
Yeah, Miss Masters is listening, and she wants to know.
Hey, this ain't for Miss Master. I got a real good song for Miss Master.
What you gonna
This
say?
is my favorite song.
Okay.
So I put it on my heart.
Oh,
You want to hear it? It goes like this. Oh, how I love Jesus,
Oh, God.
but I just don't talk. Have a good one, baby.
I knew it was coming, Q. I knew it was coming. 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. For a lot of people that love the Democratic Party, well, the guy opened that door, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
So I'm going to take 4 minutes to teach, 5 minutes to teach you the truth about the Democratic Party, because we like dealing with facts on this show. And I think that opened the conversation up, because I want to hear some from some of our new listeners. Some of the people that ain't been exposed to the truth, but they're going to recognize God, so you must worship me in spirit and in truth. And I come to collapse the lie.
Come on now.
That's what he sent me to do, and that's what I plan on doing.
racial equality and civil rights, which political party comes to mind? The Republicans or the Democrats? Most people would probably say the Democrats, but this answer is incorrect. Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery, started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 1960s. In contrast, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case Dred Scott versus Sandford. The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slavery question was, of course, ultimately resolved by a bloody civil war. The commander-in-chief during that war was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. 6 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated President Lincoln. Lincoln's vice president, a Democrat named Andrew Johnson, assumed the presidency. But Johnson adamantly opposed Lincoln's plan to integrate the newly freed slaves into the South's economic and social order. Johnson and the Democratic Party were unified in their opposition to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote. All 3 passed only because of universal Republican support. During the era of Reconstruction, federal troops stationed in the South helped secure rights for the newly freed slaves. Hundreds of black men were elected to Southern state legislatures as Republicans, and 22 black Republicans served in the U.S. Congress by 1900. The Democrats did not elect a black man to Congress until 1935. But after Reconstruction ended, when the federal troops went home, Democrats roared back into power in the South. They quickly reestablished white supremacy across the region with measures like black codes, laws that restricted the ability of blacks to own property and run businesses, and they imposed poll taxes and literacy tests used to subvert black citizens' right to vote. And how was all of this enforced? By terror, much of it instigated by the Ku Klux Klan, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. As historian Eric Foner, himself a Democrat, notes, in effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, shared many views with the Klan. He resegregated many federal agencies and even screened the first movie ever played at the White House, the racist film, The Birth of a Nation, originally entitled The Klansman. A few decades later, the only serious congressional opposition to the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 came from Democrats. 80% of Republicans in Congress supported the bill, less than 70% of Democrats did. Democratic senators filibustered the bill for 75 days until Republicans mustered the few extra votes needed to break the logjam. And when all of their efforts to enslave blacks, keep them enslaved, and then keep them from voting had failed, the Democrats came up with a new strategy. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote for Democrats. As President Lyndon Johnson was purported to have said about the Civil Rights Act, I'll have them voting Democrat for 200 years. So now, the Democratic Party prospers on the votes of the very people it has spent much of its history oppressing. Democrats falsely claim that the Republican Party is the villain, when in reality, it's the failed policies of the Democratic Party that have kept blacks down. Massive government welfare has decimated the black family. Opposition to school choice has kept them trapped in failing schools. Politically correct policing has left black neighborhoods defenseless against violent crime. So when you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party should come to mind? I'm Carol Swain.
All right, y'all, that's 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. It's the same predicament, Q. And the main thing that I'd like people to get listening to the show, those that are believers, the foundation of this show is for people that are believers to learn how we live life from a Bible perspective.
That's true.
If anybody is an unbeliever and they want to call in the show and disagree with what we believe, and that's what the show is for, and my obligation as a believer is not to give you what I think or what I feel, but what does the Word of God say, how we should address situations. The reason I'm starting out with this Democratic thing, because as a pastor, the biggest threat to the church right now is the political season in America. They're passing laws that are contrary to the Word of God, that are rejecting the Word of God. And people that are supposedly believers of the Word of God are supporting, endorsing, and putting these people in power to pass these laws. The same-sex marriage is bad enough by itself.
True.
But this thing that infanticide, when Mario Cuomo passed that law in New York because the liberals, the Democrats, the progressives, because they feel like that Roe versus Wade is going to be overturned, and it should, to make sure that a woman has the right, they say, for her reproductive rights. How's it reproductive when all you get is a dead baby? Planned parenthood. No, it's planned for you not to be a parent. I pray that, especially if you're black, you would educate yourself on who Margaret Sanger is. I pray that, especially if you're black, that you would look up the history, the foundation of Planned Parenthood. It started off as the Negro Project. It was a project to stop unwanted black babies from being born to mess up America.
Ain't nothing but the devil.
Nothing but the devil. And now you have black people. You have more babies in New York that are black babies that are aborted than born.
Yeah, true.
Since 1973, you had over 18 million black babies that have been aborted. If you add those 18 million in with the population of black America right now, and those had babies, blacks would actually be the majority in America. So what Margaret Sanger wants, she got it.
Mm-hmm.
She got you to buy in into killing your own. We have a president now that all they got to do is say, hate Donald Trump. No, hate Donald Trump. No, Donald Trump racist. He's a racist. He's a racist. Mm-hmm. Looked at Spike Lee at the Oscars, saying Trump is racist. But yet, if you call me at 901-315-6018, I seen the picture of he hugging Trump and pointing at him to the crowd, letting them know he's the man. But yet, because Democrats are feeding, especially black people, why are you picking up black people, Pastor Guy? I'll tell you why. Only black people, for Democrat or Republican, can any political party know before they even put an agenda out there that they have 90% of their vote coming their way. And Democrats have capitalized onto that to where they know that they can do and they can say whatever they want to. And black America gonna vote for them.
That's true.
But I'm trying to appeal to those of you out there that are Christians, that say you're Christians. Even if you hate Donald Trump, even if you don't want to vote Republican, don't vote against God. Don't go and vote and let these people pass these laws that a baby can be killed after they born. Don't let this militant mindset lead you from following the instructions of God of how we should live our life. You can't keep supporting and endorsing something like that and think that God's going to be happy with it. Oh, by the way, when this commercial playing, don't remember Sheen Armstrong at 901-303-8804. It's 901-303-8804. She can take care of all your insurance needs. We're going to get our commercial loaded up and all that as we getting past this first day. It's first day, day one, y'all. And so far, so good. We riding through it. Trying to get to this portion that needs to play. That's a long commercial, okay? For those of you that don't know what infanticide is and the law that the Democrats just blocked, let me play this for you. So that way when you vote for them, you know that you're helping them kill a baby.
Abortions at the end of the term, requiring healthcare officials to treat them with the same degree and skill and care that they would of any other baby. But it was short of the 60 votes needed to advance. Joining me now is the author of that abortion survivors bill, Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse. Senator, thank you very much for being here tonight. Your thoughts on your bill, which I know you feel very strongly about.
I do feel strongly about this. This is about the most simple thing you can say, which is that a baby is a baby, and they have dignity and they have worth, and it's not because they're powerful, it's because they're babies. And so today is a sad day in the United States Senate, but I remain hopeful long term, because ultimately the United States Senate today could have a bunch of people, 44 of our members, decided to try to stick their head in the sand and pretend that a baby isn't a baby, but 320 million Americans are going to have conversations around their kitchen table that are going to be more loving and logical, and in the long term I think that this is going to head in the right direction. But today's a sad day.
Were you surprised? Was there anybody who voted against this that you had spoken to who you thought maybe was going to be on board?
I'm surprised at all 44 people who voted no, frankly, because the way this bill was characterized by the big abortion industry shows how desperate they are, because they just lied constantly about the bill. And we heard, I think, 6 floor speeches from opponents of my legislation, and I think 4 of them were filled with just this blatant nonsense that had nothing to do with anything that was in the text of the bill. So I'm surprised that all 44 no votes. Condemning infanticide should be a unanimous vote. It should be a basic human rights issue.
What was the argument? What do you think was the most common misunderstanding, as you would see it, in terms of the way they, decided to vote no?
Yeah, well, most of the people who opposed the bill that spoke against it today claimed that it would end abortion, that it would stand between a woman and her doctor. And I am a very pro-life guy. That is true. I'm unapologetically pro-life. But that's not what this bill was actually about. This bill didn't touch anything having to do with abortion access or Roe v. Wade. This is about babies that had already been born and were alive out of the womb, gasping for breath on a table. And so almost everybody who spoke against the bill just made up stuff claiming that it limited abortion. There were a few people who tried to draw an active-passive distinction about how babies are killed once they're born alive, and they would say things like, well, nobody's taking a pillow and putting it over the face of the little baby and suffocating her. That's true. They're letting them die by exposure, by backing away from the table, the same way the Aztecs and the Greeks used to take babies that had physical deformities and leave them on the mountainside and let them die by exposure.
I mean, it reminds everyone of what we heard Governor Northam say in Virginia about, after the child is born, there's a discussion that ensues between the doctor and the parent. And I had a guest here last week or so, a young man who was born without arms, whose parents faced the same exact decision, and he's gone on to live a really full life. But he says that the doctors turned to his mother and said, what would you like us to do? I just want to put up a poll. This is a Marist poll that shows actually there's some interesting movement according to this one poll that shows the pro-life has gone from 38% in January to 47% now in their most recent read. Do you think that number is accurate, and why do you think that change might be happening?
I think the American people are having more interesting conversations around their dinner table than is happening in the United States Senate. The Senate fancies itself the greatest deliberative body in the world, but today there was so much nonsense thrown around. I think one of the most interesting things in the pro-life movement more broadly, and again, to distinguish, today was an anti-infanticide vote. This wasn't really about abortion, but in the pro-life movement more broadly, one of the things you find is that the more people are exposed to sonogram technology and to images of what's actually happening in utero, you know what they find out? That a 3D image of a baby shows a baby. And if you see a baby, you tend to think that a baby has dignity and worth and rights, and that we don't just get to decide to kill a baby. And so I think the pro-life movement is going to be the way of the future, because there's more and more images and more imaging technology becoming available.
I think you're right about that. In terms of where this goes next, is there a next chapter for your bill? We rewrite it. What will you do? And also, how much of how much of an impact does this debate that you rightly point out is just getting a lot more attention and people are starting to look at it differently, I think. How much of this plays in the presidential election, do you think?
You know, I don't know. I'm one of 8 people out of 100 in the Senate who's never been a politician before, so I don't pretend to be any good at horse racing or handicapping that. But you had, it feels like a third of the Democratic caucus in the Senate is currently running for president, and almost all of them declared their candidacy by saying they stand for the voiceless, they stand for the most vulnerable, they stand for the weakest and the neediest among us. And today they had a chance to actually cast a vote for those little boys and girls who really are the most vulnerable and the weakest and the neediest among us. And it turned out there was just a whole bunch of rhetoric and a bunch of nonsense about what they actually believed. And I think the American people are going to notice that kind of thing. This shouldn't be about politics, though. This should be far beyond Republican versus Democrat. This should be about having a heart. And if you see a baby, you think a baby deserves care. And we have an obligation to provide care for those helpless little babies. And I think in the future, that's where we're going to end up.
Senator Sasse, thank you. Always good to speak with you, sir.
Good to be tonight.
It's a baby. It's a baby, Q.
Yes, it is.
But yet we have people that openly politic and tell you that if you elect me, I'm going to see to it that mother decides, oh, watch this. 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490 is the calling numbers. The father, even if the woman is married, the father has no say-so whatsoever and what to do with the baby. New York has passed this law. Virginia, remember the governor with the black face?
Yes.
They've submitted that law, Rhode Island and some more states, because they want to make sure that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, because we hate Donald Trump, that they got laws that, well, even if they overturn Roe versus Wade, we'll show them we got up to a year where the woman can kill the baby. Do you hate Donald Trump that much to let these people pass these kind of laws and say you're a Christian? 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. Whenever you let people go too far with liberalism, because the Bible says, not I, Isaiah chapter 32, that liberal ideology is evil.
Yes, sir.
And whenever you let people go too far with liberal ideology, they always go, whenever you let people start going the trail of liberal ideology, they always go too far. Because Satan ain't never satisfied. Just like they want to pass a bill so they can kill a baby. After the baby's born, nothing but the devil. In Georgia, Stacey Abrams' country, they got a congresswoman or a state senator or something, it'll tell you her name. She has to do, Democrat, she introduced a bill that she wants to make a testicular bill of rights.
Okay.
The rights of what a man is supposed to do with his scrotums. This liberal ideology. Got a caller?
We'll go to commercial real quick.
Go to commercial, yeah.
Okay.
Let me see how you do that.
Okay.
You got Sheena Armstrong in there?
I think so. That's right.
Let's get Miss Sheena. Yes, Miss Sheena.
Are you looking for affordable auto, home, life, renters, or barrier insurance? Insurance of Memphis shop multiple carriers to find the best rate for our customers. Have an issue with driving license or SR22 filing? Insurance of Memphis has a market just for you. When the other says no, Insurance of Memphis says yes. Insurance of Memphis is located at 3556 Hickory Hill Road at 901-417-8022. Call your local authorized progressive agent, Sheena. Call now, Mama, she give you a free quote, and you'll be glad you did.
All right, y'all, we're back. We got about 20 minutes left in the day's show. It's 901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490. Let's show you how far they'll go out there. This representative Q just showed me how I got 2 mics, put one by the speaker, and talk to one. I want him to keep trying to move the mic. And I'm getting, I still got a flip phone. I like my flip phone. I'm not ashamed that I have a flip phone. I bet when I flip my phone closed, it does not let other people listen to my conversation. Everybody need to get a flip phone. If it's up to me, they'll put them back on the wall, and you got to use rotary dial too. Ooh. With the way Facebook doing, folks, we need to go back to the basics.
No.
Let's listen to the representative from Georgia.
Don't just look at it.
They got to get exterminate these Chris, the Godfather Pest Control, 901-5815. That's 901-5815.
The legendary F-150. Powerful Mustang.
Just hit the little mute button. I'm going to get this stuff down.
A Georgia lawmaker is hoping to spark a conversation, drafting a surprising piece of legislation. She's calling it the Testicular Bill of Rights, a direct response to the anti-abortion bill known as the Heartbeat Bill, currently making its way through the State House. Democratic Representative Darshan Kendrick posted about her proposal on Twitter. The picture shows her request for its drafting. The bill would require men to get permission from their sex partner before they can get a prescription for medications like Viagra. For men, having sex without a condom would become a sexual assault. They'd also have to wait 24 hours before buying pornographic material or sex toys in the state. DNA testing would be required once a pregnant woman reached 6 weeks in 1 day to find out who fathered an unborn child and require him to begin paying child support right away. It would also ban all vasectomies in the state, listing the same punishments as those in the anti-abortion bill.
A lot of folks talking about this one, so here's what some of you were saying on our Up Late and 11 Live Facebook page. Wade saying, this is brilliant. Alana is saying, I particularly like the child support piece, but they're all good and fair. This should pass. But this comment coming from Jackie saying, this is stupid. A lot of you saying this, that this is a waste of time. There's more important things to address. Representative Kendrick, though, says she knows that this has little chance of passing, but she says she's trying to keep people talking about this anti-abortion bill and opposition of it.
All right, thanks a lot, J. Bill.
901-452-3094 or 901-324-7490.
So let me get this straight. They in that bill, they want to make sure you can't go. If I want to go get a vasectomy, I couldn't get one. So it'd be outlawed.
Yep.
But they could go.
You can't get no Viagra without permission from your sex partner.
So if my wife say no, that means I can't get nothing.
It sounds like with that your girlfriend can say it. It said wife, it said sex partner.
Oh Lord Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
So they're taking all the control.
Yeah, this Me Too and
Jezebel.
It's a Jezebel spirit.
Yeah, this gonna call
these women are demasculizing men in America. And it's not about even black or white, man. What's happening to R. Kelly and Bill Cosby, man, it's going across the board. Harvey Weinstein and Charlie Rose and Matt Lauer and Kevin Spacey, and you can go up Russell Simmons and you go up and down the ladder. This thing that they're starting, see, all this stuff is spilling over with Brett Kavanaugh.
Yes.
And they mad because Donald Trump won the election.
That's true.
So now this spirit has risen where they're capitalizing on people's emotions and people's hate and people's rebellion. And make the title, we hate Donald Trump. He's a racist. We hate Donald Trump. So that way, while you're so busy focusing on we hate Donald Trump, that you're putting people in places that they are making laws that are going to destroy the fabric of this country. This crazy woman they got, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Oh, Lord.
She proclaimed the world is going to end in 12 years. I got a new Green Deal. When you get through, we're going to stop this stuff when you're driving these cars with all this gasoline and all that, and because it's destroying the environment and it's causing climate change. Job chapter 37 in the book of Genesis said that God is in control of the weather. So you're going to let somebody, because they say that they're scientists, convince you that because you driving a Corvette is making hurricanes come? Might as well go on and listen to Charles Darwin too, man, evolved from a monkey.
Oh, Lord.
Because it's science. Because it's science. Where's your faith? Where's your belief?
Well, if a man evolved from a monkey, why we still have monkeys?
That's what I want to understand. How come monkeys don't start turning into men now?
Mm-hmm.
But that's science. Just like the earth came from a big explosion, it exploded out. And if you say it long enough and you say it loud enough, it becomes true. The Bible has to be lived by faith because we serve a God that we can't see. But at least with the God that I can't see, if I follow the instructions of what he got in that word, I found I live a real peaceful, good life.
Same here.
Because for those of you at 2 o'clock that don't know my background, I got 4 years in state and federal penitentiaries. I got 16 years of shooting dope, smoking dope, snorting dope, and swallowing dope. I used to rob churches. I ain't talking about your church's chicken. Your friend in the neighborhood sanctuary, I was that man in that ski mask. Former Muslim, former Buddhist, former atheist, all that. When I read that word, I read it to prove there was no God. He proved to me that he was God. Amen, amen. And that I needed him. And he made the rest of my life the best of my life. I love telling people what my past is. Because then it gives me a chance to tell them about my present.
That's so true.
And on the show, if you just sit there and listen just long enough, let me tell you what God has shown me my future going to be. And I'm here to help you out. We're not here for fame.
No.
We're not here for fortune.
No.
This is a work of the ministry. To come across the airways, to be a Christian voice, to bring people back to reasoning, and to make them aware when they're outside the word, will, and way of God. That's what this is about. Trying to stop y'all from letting people make a fool of you, in other words.
Yeah, we're trying to wake you up.
Letting folks send you out, like this woman, Kamala Harris. Kamala's running for the presidency of the United States of America. She went and had dinner with Mr. Al Sharpton to get his endorsement for president. The same Al Sharpton who visited the White House over 80 times.
Call back that caller.
The same Al Sharpton who has been known as the civil rights leader for many years. They call him Reverend. But you've ever noticed Reverend Al Sharpton and Reverend Jesse Jackson have two things in common. They never pastored a church anywhere on the planet Earth, nor graduated from any theological school. What? Nope, never. But they use that term reverend to mesmerize black folks with emotions before they sell them out. Did you know?
What's that?
That Al Sharpton was, you remember Tawana Bromley?
Yes, sir.
Did you know he tricked folks?
What?
He lied, man. He had folks following behind that stuff, talking about that girl I got raped by white men, and he milked it up real good, real good. And then when everything went down, Tawana Bromley had to go change her name. The two lawyers lost their license. Al got busted selling some dope, and he became FBI informant.
No, really?
Oh, really? He did. I tell you what, we got about 6 minutes. We'll find out. And don't take my word for it. Let's go to the truth. This is the Truth Radio Show. Remember?
Tawana Brawley is a 16-year-old girl whose story is the talk of New York these days. A New York State teenager who claims that she was abducted and raped by 6 white men.
In the late 1980s, Tawana Brawley became a household name as her horrific stories spread across the nation.
She had KKK written across her chest and nigger across her stomach.
Leading to widespread outrage.
We're going to expose the facts in these crimes that you do against black people.
And intense soul searching about race in America.
Let Miss Brawley represent what we're not going to stand for as parents, as Americans, and as human beings.
But how did investigators discover the truth behind the Brawley rape? And what is its legacy today?
I think that the lessons of Brawley is very instructive for me and others. But I think that people want to cut off the lessons where they want.
What lesson? Y'all ride on motion.
He hustling now. He will hustle.
A news story from a small town.
But it is a hustle
70
people when
miles
you're
north
playing
of
on
New York
emotion.
City shocked the nation.
Special segment tonight, the Tawana Brawley case. She was found wrapped in a plastic bag, by some accounts, sexually assaulted.
The 16-year-old cheerleader said she'd been abducted 4 days earlier and had been repeatedly raped and sodomized.
She was found in a fairly frightening state. She had a pair of sneakers that had been cut with a razor. Her hair seemed matted and covered with feces. There was writing on her chest. The jeans that she had were burnt in the crotch. It was like, this is not a normal state to find someone.
More unsettling was the claim Brawley made on national television about one of her attackers.
He was a cop. He was a police officer.
Brawley attracted a team of activists to her side. The Reverend Al Sharpton, C. Vernon Mason, and Alton Maddox were well known in the press, having recently focused attention on another racially charged case, the killing of a black youth who was fleeing a white mob in Howard Beach, Queens.
New York State is now the capital of racial violence.
In the Brawley
you got some media attention. Here come the rise of
and demanded a special prosecutor take over.
I was a spokesman for the legal team and the family of Miss Brawley. I was involved to help bring light on the fact that there was a situation here that needed to be adjudicated.
We are not going to let this girl be the scapegoat of a corrupt system.
We want to show the world how low down, dongus, and callous the state of New York is.
Brawley's advisors declared they had a suspect, a young police officer named Harry Chris Jr., who had committed suicide days after her attack.
The media now has released that Tawana identified Chris.
What's the evidence?
Tawana's voice on the tape identifying Chris.
With protesters taking to the streets, the state attorney general dispatched veteran investigator John Ryan to upstate New York with orders to solve the increasingly sensitive case.
We attempted immediately to sit down with Tawana and her family, and we reached out repeatedly to her attorneys, her advisors, and that was never fruitful.
Her lawyers, it was their decision, along with her family, which I announced, that they did not want to cooperate because they did not trust the special prosecutor that was appointed by the governor.
We might send them a letter, and then, they'd have a press conference.
The lawyers charged that Dutchess County Assistant District Attorney Stephen Pagonis was among the girl's attackers and demanded his arrest.
We have the facts and the evidence that an assistant district attorney and a state trooper did this. She made statements to the lawyer. She never made statements to me. I did not ask a 15-year-old girl what happened. I believe the lawyers believed their client, and I believe that we had an obligation to go forward.
Without Brawley's cooperation, Ryan tried to divine some clues from the initial police investigation.
In the course of the interview with the police, she literally only said one word. She would also indicate, I believe by eye blinks, they would ask her a question and she would indicate yes or no. The police officer took what they could get. She was found in a grassy area behind the building that her family had previously lived in, very near the apartment, which was then vacant but unlocked. She had literally just come off being grounded because she got home at 5 in the morning from some party. She goes to visit a boyfriend in jail, and then she eventually takes the bus home, and that's the last time anybody saw her officially during those 4 days.
From his headquarters at the State Armory in Poughkeepsie, Ryan and his team struggled to make sense of a case that seemed to grow more complicated every day.
We were an investigation under siege.
We closed the bridge, the court, and this building, and Main Street.
The press had its agenda, no offense. The advisors had their agenda, no offense. Quite frankly, we had to deal with those of us in the armory against the rest of the world.
There were scores of false leads. An acquaintance said he was with Brawley. He wasn't. A man claimed to have secret tapes that cast doubt on the veracity of Brawley's advisors. He didn't.
We started a rumor about a 9-fingered man, just to see how long it would take for a press report, to call us and start to ask about the 9-fingered man. I think it took 2 days.
But such moments of levity were brief.
The trooper starts up the steps of the armory, and these demonstrators decided they weren't going to let him in. That was fighting him. Next thing we knew, Reverend Sharpton was accusing me of kicking a blind man. That bothered me. You realize how a lie can spread.
Her advisors have said a lot the past few months, charging that white local officials were involved in the crime, not to mention the Mafia, the Ku Klux Klan, and the Irish Republican Army.
Compared Abrams to Hitler and said Brawley would go to jail rather than cooperate with the investigators.
Maddox would actually say that the Attorney General of the state of New York was masturbating over pictures of 15-year-old Tawana Brawley.
They looked up and they saw Maddox, Mason, and Shaw. What's wrong with them? What was wrong with us
I think a lot of the rhetoric, including mine, went too far. But I think that there's a difference between the rhetoric and the reason he got involved.
But at the time, that reason was questioned by one of his own associates.
They are frauds from the beginning.
Perry McKinnon, you couldn't see Sharpton without seeing Perry McKinnon in those days. And he was with him at all times. And, you know, he's a decorated war hero. He's all these other things.
This whole situation is not about Tawana Brawley. It's about Mason, Maddox, and Sharpton sort of taking over the town. Their exact words were, we beat this, we will be the biggest niggas in New York.
Let's take the outside
And he
chance.
took it nationwide.
And by the way, there's nobody corroborated that. If I say that if I win for president when I ran, I'll be the biggest black guy in America, does that really mean that I perpetrated a lie?
As the press turned up the heat on Brawley's advisors, Ryan uncovered new clues.
The jeans she had on were burnt in the crotch, but she wasn't burnt there. The cutting in the sneaker, clearly it was done.
She the original Juicy Smollett, ain't it?
An FBI lab agent on the case drew his attention to bits of cotton found inside the feces-smeared glove, allegedly used in the attack on Brawley.
We were having a drink, and he said to me, and the damnedest thing is we found the same thing under her fingernails. Well, I almost spit my drink out. You get burnt cotton under her fingernails, burnt cotton in the tips of the glove. There's a real good chance, you know, she's wearing those gloves.
Next, Ryan set about discovering the source of the racial epithet found on Brawley's body.
I was burning cotton in my kitchen and wasn't getting anywhere. And the burnt cotton fibers fell into the sink. And my wife, who's always been smarter than me, leaned forward, put her finger on the burnt cotton in the water, went like this, went like that. Looks like it to me. It was the last piece of the puzzle.
Today, after 7 months, 6,000 pages of testimony, and 180 witnesses, a grand jury found beyond any doubt Tawana Brawley's story is a lie.
Those allegations are untrue. The people who made those allegations lied. Their outrageous, irresponsible acts have increased the atmosphere of tension between the races.
I think that people have to advocate what they believe in. I have friends right now that believe O.J. Simpson is guilty right now. Right now. And a jury said he's not. Does that mean that I think they don't have credibility? That means that I think that they have a belief that I don't share, and a jury didn't share. A grand jury did not believe Ms. Brawley. I believe there was reason to pursue this situation.
Yeah, your own vainglory.
One of the real victims of this case was the family of the police officer. They suffered the loss of their son through a horrible means, and then were subjected in the press to these allegations which had nothing to do with them.
I didn't bring them in the case, Ms. Brawley did. I was speaking for Ms. Brawley. I mean, of course we wanted to see aspects of what her allegation was investigated.
Pagonis was also indicated in the report.
We accounted for virtually every moment of his time over the 4-day period and concluded he had absolutely nothing to do with it.
There's absolutely no way that this served any good social purpose. If you concoct a rape, then you undermine the credibility of women who are raped. If you concoct a rape and turn it into a race crime, then you undermine true victims of race crimes.
About 6 months after the hoax was unmasked, Brawley's former boyfriend told Newsday that Tawana had invented the scheme, apparently to avoid a beating by her mother's boyfriend after running away from home. But Brawley, who now works as a nurse under another name in Virginia, has steadfastly refused to explain herself publicly.
I'm not a liar and I'm not crazy.
What did I lie about? Lie about what? Grand jury to me didn't really exist. That was all a farce.
Brawley and her advisors lost a defamation suit to Pagonis in 1998. Maddox had his law license suspended due to his refusal to answer questions about his conduct during the case. And Mason lost his because of unconnected ethical lapses. Sharpton was acquitted in a series of charity-related fraud charges.
I think that we, and certainly I, going forward, learned how to be more cautious. But I also think the media has not adopted a lot of this lesson, and I think prosecutors have not adopted its lesson.
The activist himself has moved on from the hoax that has altered the lives of so many others.
Barack Obama.
I told Reverend Al backstage, he's getting skinnier than me.
If we had something right or wrong, at least give us credit. At least give me credit for a life that was geared towards social justice, even if you think I was wrong.
You never did nothing socially for black Americans. Let's stop it right there because we're running out of time. Well, those will be some of the lies that's going to be exposed on this show. There's going to be truth coming to you from the Word of God. Most importantly, we're going to give you the tools you need to live in peace, in harmony, as an American, man or woman, and proud to be so. How much time we got left, Q?
We got 2 minutes.
Well, y'all, this is the Truth Radio Show. We'll be here Monday through Friday from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm Andre Guy Reed.
Hey, Tawan Brayton here.
And the rules are we deal with everything from sex, race, religion, politics, and even sometimes sports from a Bible perspective. Amen. Forget about the black man, forget about the white man. We're going to deal with the human, and we're going to get there by putting all our faith in God. You got the AndreGuy.com.
No, let me find it real quick.
Okay, we can go out with that. That'll give us enough to let the next person come in here because we don't want to invade on anybody else's time. We are very, very respectful of other folks' time. Well, if you want to come by the church, we're located at 1561 Boxwood, Memphis, Tennessee, 38108. You can reach me at AndreGuy1@bellsouth.net. Our webpage is AndreGuy.com. If you have trouble getting that, just go and click in Revelation Christian Center. When you see Andre Guy, you know that's us. Amen. We love you. God bless you. We'll be back tomorrow. Telling the truth. You found it.
You have been listening to the Truth Radio Talk Show, brought to you by Revelation Christian Center. Revelation Christian Center is located at 1561 Boxwood, Memphis, Tennessee, 38108. If you would like to sponsor or advertise on the Truth Radio Show, call Pastor Andre Guy Reed at 901-315-6018. Again, that's 901-315-6018. To help the truth keep spreading.